What's up guys, this is Valentina of Bigger Creations, and today we're talking about 8 production tips that I use on almost every single project. Let's get into it. Like I said, I'm going to be sharing 8 tips that I use on almost every single project these days, starting with number 1. Mix your instruments before you add the vocals. What do I mean by this? Basically, you have your beat, you've put all your instrumentation, your drums, all these effects tracks, everything. Mix those first. Just mute your vocal tracks. Don't worry about that. Worry about the beat first. Once you've got the beat in check, then you can start adding in the vocals, and I promise you, you'll actually get your vocals to pop more when you do it that way. Something about doing it the other way around makes it so that the instruments drown the vocals. Tip number 2, use loops, but don't use loops. Let me explain. So you have a drum loop in your project. Let's say it sounds like this. So this drum loop by itself sounds awesome, but maybe it's not the perfect loop for your project, but it has elements in it that you want to use. This is what I would recommend doing when you find a loop like this. So now it sounds like a completely different loop, and all I have to do is join these edits, and then I can use this throughout my beat. So now we went from using a really busy loop for hi-hats to a more customized sound. Tip number 3. Record vocals as a reference track as soon as possible. Whether it's you, the artist on the track, or you just writing or producing on the track for then another artist to come and sing on it, record a reference track as soon as possible. I would recommend recording any sorts of ideas, any sorts of concepts while you've got those creative juices flowing, because chances are later on you're not going to remember them, and recording them is going to be a lifesaver. Record some ideas up front. There may be some that you're going to use, and there may be some that you're not going to use, and then there may be some that you think you're not going to use, and then at the end of the project you find the perfect place for that melody. So record a reference as soon as you can. Tip number 4, use different octaves of the same sound, whether it's the loop that you're using or the sample you created or a vocal. If you want to see how I recommend layering octaves in vocals, then I made a video all about that. I'll link to it up here and in the description. But if you want to see how I would use this for an instrument track, let me show you. So here we have the original sample. And what I've done is just copied that exact sample and pitched it down -12 semitones. Exactly the same note, but on a lower pitch. And this is what it sounds like. You can see how the dynamics of the beat can change, especially throughout an arrangement. If you want it to sound differently in the chorus versus the verse, or the verse versus the bridge, you can now get some variety of that same sample loop that you've created, but at a different octave without having to do too much of a difference. Tip number 5, listen to your finished song. Finished in quotes, because you might realize that you're not actually finished after you do this step. But once you think you've finished a song, listen to it on every single audio device that you own or have access to. Here's why. Yes, you may be in your studio and it may sound perfect in your studio monitors. And yes, maybe that's the most accurate sound because they're studio monitors, but not everyone has access to perfect, flat, balanced studio monitors or a perfectly treated room or home studio. It's going to sound different on your phone, where you don't have those lower frequency responses, versus your car, where you might get a little bit more of a boomy sound, or your home theater system, or a boombox, or a Bluetooth speaker. Use literally anything that you have. Listen to the song as many times as you can on different platforms, and it will easily show you what is wrong with your mix or what you can adjust to maximize the audio quality, regardless of what platform your listeners will listen to you on. Speaking of finishing songs, once you finish a song, you want to release it, right? You want people to listen to it. This video is sponsored by DistroKid. DistroKid is my favorite way to get my music on all streaming platforms and digital stores. So Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, you name it, it will be everywhere. And it is the most affordable option. I've been using DistroKid for over 10 years, and I love it because they really try to put the power back into the independent artist. So there are so many promotional tools that you can use included in the DistroKid membership that you can use to promote your music once it's released. One of my favorite features of DistroKid is promo cards. DistroKid makes it super easy with all of these pre-made templates that insert your album artwork or cover artwork, and just like that, you can upload it to social media and start promoting your music. This is just one of my favorite features of DistroKid. There are so many other ones, so check them out. If you use the link in the description, you'll get 7% off. Tip number 6, and anybody who lives with a producer is gonna know this one. Nail down the melody first, and then figure out your sound selection. So sometimes people like starting with a piano sound. Sometimes that doesn't work for me. Sometimes I have to use like an electric piano sound or like a pad sound, get my melody down, and then just replay that on a loop while I'm switching through different sounds to figure out the best sound for this project. A lot of times people get stuck on the melody process just because they haven't found the right sound. Sometimes it's worth just going with the sound that you found at first and then building around it and then going back to find the right sound to replace it. Nail down your melody first. I promise you it's going to make you more productive as a producer, and you're going to finish a lot more projects. Tip number 7, use EQ or EQ automation to give variety to your samples or your beat, especially when you're arranging your song. Let me show you what I mean. So on this particular beat, in the part where I used the original octave of the sample, I EQ'd the sample very differently than when I used it in lower octave. And you can always automate this, or you can, if you want the change to be more apparent and less of a transition between them, then you can put them on separate tracks with separate EQ settings. Let me show you what that looks like. So on the original octave, I did a very mid-rangey EQ adjustment. I cut off a lot of the high end and some of the low end and just kept that middle area to make it feel like it's a little bit underwater. Now, I didn't want this to go from like a sweep where it went from this like muffled underwater sound all the way to the full frequency range. Instead, I wanted a different type of transition. So I created a separate track where I had my same sample melody in a lower octave, but with a different EQ. Let me show you. So in this situation, I only cut off the very low range because now that it's at a lower octave, we didn't want those lower frequencies to really interact with the 808 or the kick drum. So keeping it more in check and not worrying about the higher frequencies because now they're more in the mid range since it's a lower octave. This is an easy way to add some variation to your tracks, especially if you get in the habit of kind of looping the same melody. You can get a completely different sound if you use this technique. Last but not least, tip number 8 that I use on every single production is stop listening to your own song for at least a day or a few hours. I can't tell you how many times I've been super inspired and then the next day I listened to the song that I thought was the biggest banger in the world and it's not that great. So listen to it a day later, give your ears a rest. It will actually help you from a mixing standpoint to figure out, mixing things that you need to fix, but then also from a songwriting perspective and structure perspective and sound selection, It's better to approach it with fresh ears after at least a few hours where you've already forgotten what it sounds like. If you haven't done that, then do it. I guarantee it will help you mix better, produce better, and feel better about your songs. So there you have it, guys. Those are 8 tips that I use on every single production, almost every single production. Hopefully they were helpful for you. What are some things that you do in every single production that have saved your life? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future videos. And as always, if you ever have any questions or want to see more content, check me out on Instagram or TikTok. Keep making beats.